I'm so impressed with this room. I can hear myself.
There you go.
No, that's weird.
Is it weird?
That's fucking weird.
Is that weird?
That's weird.
Is it weird?
It is a little weird.
Oh.
Let's try this.
Okay.
Okay.
If you hate it,
I don't know.
we'll change it.
I'm nervous.
Oh, let me get this going.
Oh, what do you got up here? Okay.
I'm going to put on some smooth jazz just to...
Oh.
Not really.
Okay, like Sade or something.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Sade's
Okay.
good.
Smooth operator, right?
Let me see.
This is like pro level stuff.
Well, hey, I'm glad you're the first guest because
this is awesome. You like hit
is...
Amazon hard on this shit, man.
Yeah, like I said, it was like slowly over a year, and I changed the whole camera setup out.
Okay.
The switcher thing was a last minute addition.
Okay.
I switched out the board. This is the third board.
Okay, you're gonna have like a logo on there.
Yeah,
or is
I'm gonna try the logo. Yeah.
I can get like a 9-year-old to fix this for you.
I could, yeah. We could hire a middle schooler.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Okay.
But I won't.
Okay. I think that Maximum Overspray is so small.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it needs to be a larger.
You think so?
Because nobody's going to be able to see that.
Yeah. Well, it's in the. They'll see it in the graphic.
Okay.
Like when it plays,
yeah,
and then it goes. They can't avoid
Did
it.
you actually record a spray paint doing that?
Actually, I went on.
Download it.
I downloaded it and made a soundscape. I edited it together myself to be exactly what I wanted it to do because that's what I do.
That is amazing.
I'm particular, like,
and super cheap of you too, because there's actually people on like Upwork in Bangladesh that can do that for you for $20. But I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
So my whole beef is going back and forth. Like I don't want it to be wrong, and then have to talk to them for a week before it's right. I'll just do it myself in 20 minutes.
But Sahib in Dhaka, Bangladesh, is currently starving because you're not getting him work.
I mean, I feel bad about that, but I also don't want to wait a week for a graphic.
This is true. This is true.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Francke.
Francke.
Yeah.
So Jan Francke.
Yeah.
Jan Francke.
Yeah, you spell it wrong all the time on LinkedIn, by the way, but that's okay.
I do?
Yeah, and on your brochures too.
Well, you should have told me that. Like,
I'm being polite. I'm polite Canadian. I would never correct you.
You can't be polite about that.
It's okay.
I hate that.
All right.
I hate when people do that.
John Chang or something. That would be completely wrong. But,
I can't stand when people do that, and that sucks that I'm doing that.
That's okay. I'm okay. You've even tagged the wrong person. Like
what?
Yeah. You tagged an accountant in Amsterdam, and he's absolutely. It's amazing. The guy got so many hits, and he's like, oh yeah, amazing. He reached out to me. It just went full circle.
You're kidding me right now.
I'm totally kidding you right now.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, you did.
Holy shit.
But you did tag some guy with missing the scene, the last name, and it's some anyway, it doesn't matter. It's all good. It's all good.
We got to keep this. This is actually good stuff.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh my God. So
here we are.
Glad to have you. Welcome to America.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't been shot yet. I feel very lucky. I haven't seen anybody with guns. It's really surprising, but I've been here 20 minutes.
Do you want to go to the range?
No, I'm good.
Oh, are you sure?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm Canadian. We don't even know what that word means, right? So it's like, yeah, it's all good.
I think you guys banned airsoft.
Probably, yeah. I wouldn't be, woke enough. So, I think it's something that we wouldn't do in Canada, or we'd like to say that we don't. So, yeah, it's all good.
This is as political as we're ever going to get.
That's right. We had this discussion. Let's not go any further than that.
Yeah. Well, glad you're here.
Thanks, man.
Super pumped to have you. Really great to meet you in person finally.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's good to meet you in person. This is amazing. Like,
I know.
Thanks for having me down here, right? This is great. And I was so surprised. As I was telling you last night, I was like, looking at the map going, this office is so close to the airport. It's literally 2 blocks away from the wrong airport.
That's not even an airport technically. I mean, it is, but like that's where I would park my airplane if that's what I did on the weekends.
There you go. Okay.
That was cool.
So apparently the big plane's going to something that's $100 Uber ride away from here, but it's all good. It's all good. It's California. Everything's big.
So that sucks. I would have told you. So that's like the whole LinkedIn thing all over again.
That's okay.
And we just got started. So
there you go.
Jan Francke.
Yes.
Right?
Hey, you said it right.
First
This is great. Yeah.
On paint on the boots.
I'm so excited. I'm so privileged. I'm really excited about this. I need to take 5 minutes alone. I'm that excited. Like it's crazy.
I can turn the cameras off.
We're going to edit this part out, but that's a different website. Anyway.
This won't go on LinkedIn.
No. Okay.
But I can't say where it's going to go.
Exactly. I can.
So, Mom.
OnlyFans.
Actually, so I heard that my wife was telling me that actually started for like old ladies making spaghetti or something. And like for real.
OnlyFans?
Like Nana's making
did
homemade
she read
pasta.
that on Reader's Digest? Is that what her pastor told her? Because I'm pretty sure OnlyFans was designed specifically for that purpose. They're not stupid.
All I know is
There's a
lot of charges on her credit card receipts.
Right. Hey, whatever.
That's why.
Whatever.
No,
whatever, man. We don't judge. We don't judge.
Kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Not.
That's why I have a separate credit card for that. But anyway.
Only cash.
Yeah, exactly. One of those things you get at the post office. It's like, prepaid credit cards. They can't track anything. What? I'm just saying, if you were going to do that, that would be the way to do it.
No, I was just saying that's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Whatever. Yeah, you can totally get that stuff, right? Anyway, moving on.
What were we talking about?
I have no idea.
It's the first one. It can be weird. It can be 2 minutes long.
Exactly. Awkward.
So, why are we here?
I don't know. Why are we here?
That is like
that's an existential question, really.
Chicken
right?
and the egg.
I know.
But didn't dinosaurs have eggs before chickens?
Well, I can't even comment on that. That's not my training. I'm not.
You didn't.
I didn't take any biology, so I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Yeah.
You didn't see any like prehistoric bones out there with GPR. So
no.
Who are you? What do you do?
So I'm a Pentecostal minister, actually, and I preach to the unconverted. Really, I go around the world. No, I'm not. Of course not. I
should have brought some snakes.
I know you should have. I don't know what that reference is, but it sounds kind of scary.
It's a Pentecostal thing.
Oh, okay. I don't even know what that means, but okay. Anyway, what am I? I got involved with this technology called ground penetrating radar in the late 1980s and kind of stuck with it for 34 years now, I guess, right?
Nice.
Yes, 2022. And this is all I've done every day of my life for 34 years. But I love it. This is not a job. This is not what pays the bill. This is a hobby that occasionally, pays bills, I guess. But,
yeah.
It's amazing. I love it. I love every day and every challenge that comes up and literally every day something new and you go, oh, well, that's kind of weird. Let's try and solve that problem.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. That's a while. That's awesome.
I know.
And you've been all over the place, right? You pretty much travel. What's your percentage of travel?
So, so I try to claim that it's less than 50%. For tax reasons and relationship reasons and all sorts of other reasons. But the fact is it sits right around 50%. And I've been doing that literally since the early 90s.
Wow.
And it just is what it is. And it's not just like going to Seattle or something. This is going off to Saudi Arabia or to Botswana or wherever, right?
Yeah.
And I really try to come home for weekends, which means I spend a lot of time on planes and dragging radar systems around and doing lectures and all sorts of things. So
cool.
It's an interesting lifestyle, and I think people who know me just kind of, it rolls off them. Like, oh, I was in China yesterday, and they just kind of go, whatever.
Yeah.
It's boring now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I told you my Wuhan story, right?
You did, yeah. And I stepped, 3 steps back. It's like, oh, fuck, okay, you were just in Wuhan. Oh, and look at him cough. Oh, okay. Anyway.
Yeah, patient zero. But yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, that's great. So, yeah, what's your favorite place you've ever been?
Everybody asks me that, and it kind of depends on to visit or to live, right? To visit, I love a place called Nouvelle Caledonia, which is a French territory, kind of halfway between Australia and New Zealand. It's like Tahiti. Right? It's absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
There. There's some political strife right now, but it's just so gorgeous. And I did my master's there actually using GPR to map nickel laterite ore, and just fell in love with the place. It is so beautiful there,
awesome.
But not practical to live. Man, I've literally traveled to about half the countries in the world. New Zealand's amazing, amazing, amazing. It stands out as just as close to, God's country as you can get. But the crappy part is it's far away from everything. And in terms of opportunity, there's not a lot going on, right? That's where all the smart Kiwis go to Australia. But I kind of like where I live. I live, in a pretty cool country. Canada's pretty awesome. And I live in the warm part of the icebox, on Vancouver Island. And
oh, you're on the island. Nice.
I'm literally on the island. I live pretty much on a beach. And, it's like, well,
that's awesome.
It's hard to be angry at the world when you get up to that kind of environment and go, yeah, we're okay here,
Yeah, that's a beautiful place. I was up there doing an acoustic pipe locator demo.
Oh, wow.
For a utility company years back. And
right.
We took the ferry out there.
Yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it's a slower pace of life, but we've got, Seattle on a 2-hour boat ride away, and Vancouver, a 2-hour boat ride away. So if we want the big stuff, it's right there. But yeah, everything else gets delivered overnight, and yeah, it's kind of nice.
It's not Alaska then.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You're
Right?
still
So,
like in Amazon's territory. Is what you're saying. The whole
You still
Seattle.
get the overnight deliveries, yeah, for sure.
Nice, the drone.
That's
Sent
it.
from Jeff Bezos' house up there. Unless I don't know.
You can almost see Seattle where we are. Yeah,
That's cool. That's great. Awesome.
So yeah, no, it's pretty cool, and it's a great place to be based from, right? Because some of the places I go are challenging, right? I've been into war zones, I've been into all sorts of kind of crappy areas in the world, and it's nice to just come home to a little bit of peace and quiet and safety, and predictability is really nice.
Yeah,
So,
that's great.
yeah.
Yeah, and you carved out your own slice of heaven up there, it sounds like.
Pretty much. I mean, I was lucky that I was born there too, so that worked out. But yeah, I've done my time living in all sorts of different parts of the world, and gone to school in different parts of the world. And yeah, if I had a choice, I'd probably end up where I am right now.
That's great. Yeah, that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm going to do this when I retire and go here and do this. Everyone's waiting to live their
Right.
life.
Can't imagine retiring, and if I did, I'd still live where I am.
Yeah. That's kind of like, I love what I do, and I don't see myself ever being able to quit working. So that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Especially today, with the way of the world and everything.
Oh, for sure.
I'm not complaining. I love training, and I love the technology of what we do. And,
great.
EMGPR, acoustic, and you name it. The whole mapping thing. So
Yeah.
Definitely like-minded folks there.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice. So I want to talk briefly, just kind of tell the audience and stuff what you do. So you have a couple different companies, right?
I have a couple of different companies. I got into this because I'm kind of allergic to competition. I always find niche markets where there's not a lot of people doing stuff, right? Like in all aspects of my life. And which is weird because I'm super competitive, but I like to have a very small field of competition, right? So even in sport, I found weird sports to be really good at because I never do hockey or anything. There's too many hockey players in Canada. So I found like competitive stair climbing and weird shit like that. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. It is a thing. Don't laugh.
No, I've heard of this. That's why.
Yeah. You like race up the Empire State Building, right? And it's easy to win because there's not a lot of other people doing it, right? And so the first thing I did was I started a company in the late 80s, early 90s while I was still in school, when I say school, college or university, whatever you guys call it. And it was around this new technology called ground penetrating radar. It was really in its embryonic form, and everybody was using it for archaeology and finding pipes in the ground, which to me, I looked and I went, boring. That's where the money is and shit, right? But there's got to be something else we can do with this. And I borrowed money from my mother at the time. I'm an only child, so I never paid her back.
Must be nice.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's a South Asian family, and I'm an only child, so mom can have 20 grand, and that was a lot of money back then, right? Awesome. And I bought one of the early sensors and software systems, and they were called the Pulse Echo 4s, right? And these things had massive antennas, and I was trying to find opportunities to what we can do with low frequency antennas. And that turned into a little business that kept going. And now I make my own radar systems for really custom stuff. And then, I do so much work for the mining industry and really low frequency stuff. So I'm interested in looking down 100 feet, 100 feet and 200 feet, 300 feet sometimes. I'm looking for big stuff, right? Mapping bedrock or mapping ore deposits all around the world. And occasionally I get called to do utility detection work using, lawnmower type GPRs, the stuff that you guys use, right? And so I wouldn't bother making my own, there's lots of companies that make really good systems. So I'd rent these things out, or I'd buy a couple and I'd go do these surveys. And, for the last 10 years, you gather the data and if you're doing a serious survey, you're not just spray paint on the ground. You're actually collecting that data and doing something with it, right? I want to create an AutoCAD map. I want to have a deliverable. And man, the software and the steps you'd have to go through to do this I was pulling my hair out. I've got a PhD in this and I've been doing this for 30 years and I don't get it. Like, how the heck do you actually get a DXF map that works? And looking at this, 10 years ago, and there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a better, flow of getting that data from the cart into the engineer's hands, right? And can we sit down and look at starting again, forget about all the pre-existing GPR software. Can we just start again with a blank sheet and go, what would be the best way to do this? And why can't we do this in the cloud, right? Like the data sets are getting bigger and bigger. And wouldn't it be great if we can just upload everything and kind of have it done for you almost? And, you have some oversight and then click a few buttons and off it goes, right? And that was kind of the nexus for this concept of Geolitix. And, I found a good coder and literally sold them on the idea and said, hey, do you want to have 50% of this company? And you don't know anything about GPR, but trust me, this is going to turn into something. And I shouldn't say we, he worked on it for a couple of years, and we launched right in August of 2020 at the start of COVID. Good time, right?
Perfect timing.
Yeah. So I mean, it's okay. It is what it is, and we've grown super, and we've got a lot of backing from a large oil company at the time. So they were on board and pumping some money into the initial startup. And now we're running on our own and doing super well. So that's Geolitix, and that's its own little business running in the background. And then, the custom radar stuff that I do as well for absolutely bizarre applications all around the world, like nothing to do with pipe detection.
Nice. So, yeah, you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So what I, if I was, no offense, I mean, finding pipes in the ground is super exciting stuff. No, it isn't.
For me, finding pipes is kind of like buried treasure a little bit, right? So kind of like I get excited every time I find it, and it's verified. Oh yeah,
okay.
I'm like half Johnny Depp, but like the good one.
Okay.
When he wasn't crazy.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
So more Jack Sparrow.
Okay, Jack Sparrow stuff. All right. Okay. Well, I mean, if Amber Heard's around, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But anyway, I'm just saying. So, yeah, what I specialize in is having people or governments or security agencies or whatever come to me and say, hey, we have a problem. Can radar technology solve this problem? And this is stuff that a MALA system or an impulse radar or ProSec's not going to, this is not appropriate for a standard utility detection radar. This is something that needs a different form factor, a different penetration, or it needs to be flown in a spacecraft. So I get involved in everything from looking for lava tubes on the moon's surface to a lot of treasure hunting to in the pyramids last week, all sorts of crazy, crazy stuff and things that you kind of go, wow, I didn't know that radar is needed for that, but who knew, right? So there's all sorts of stuff.
Excuse me. What's like the weirdest thing you've ever had to do that you can talk about?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of it's around infiltration tunnels, systems around borders or security applications, as you can imagine.
Say no more.
Yeah, well, the funny part is where those tunnels need to be detected on certain borders happen to be really shitty radar environments, right? So just dragging a radar across even the southern border of the United States, even though it's sandy, it's really, really conductive material there, right? So then you have to look at other sorts of radars, like can you have a permanent radar system mounted in boreholes that are permanently shooting radar energy between a transmitter and receiver, doing tomography 24/7 and looking for change.
Monitoring.
Right? Yeah. Monitoring systems, right? And you could do that around prisons, across borders, whatever. And then there's all sorts of other weird applications. So, I'll tell you one that recently came up, and it's around bulk ore carriers, bulk commodity carriers on ships, right? So ships that carry grain or even iron ore or coal, particularly, in this case, it was from Australia to China. What happens is the ore itself has water in it, right? And if that bulk ore, has a certain frequency of vibration due to the ship at sea, it could actually set up a resonance frequency and flip the ship over.
Oh, wow, like a tuning fork.
Exactly, right? So the question is, how can we detect moisture changes in that ore while the ship's at sea? And can radar be used to do that, right? Can we put some antennas on the pile of ore and have this continuous monitoring system to tell the captain that, hey, something's happening within the water, the water level, I guess, in that ore, and it's changing, you got to do something. And it turns out that radar can be used for that. And you go, wow, that is so weird. But man, from an insurance standpoint, maritime insurance, that's worth tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's using ground penetrating radar. And you kind of go, that's weird, but I guess somebody needs that
I never would
technology.
have thought that.
Who knew, right?
Yeah.
There's all sorts of weird stuff. Absolutely.
What's like the coolest project you've done? Like,
The stuff I'm doing, anything around archaeology and particularly the Middle East is really, really neat. So one of the projects I'm working on is a place called Hegra or Alula, which is part of the Nabatean civilization. So you've probably heard of Petra in Jordan.
mhm.
I think Indiana Jones was filmed there. And so that civilization that built that is called the Nabateans, and their second city is called Hegra. It's just as spectacular, if not more so, than Petra. But what's really neat is that because it was in Saudi Arabia, it's essentially being off limits and inaccessible to foreigners up until recent times. And now that Saudi Arabia has really opened up in the last couple of years, you're allowed to go in there, and it's just mind-blowing stuff. And one of our challenges is to map the entire city out in exquisite detail. We're talking full 3D. And it's a challenge though, right? Because this is not something we can take one of these multi-channel GPRs out to. It's really rocky terrain, there's tufts of grass, and we can't use vehicles because there's literally archaeology sitting on the surface. Why is that? Because nobody's been there. This is not Petra. There's no tourists.
Wow.
So literally walking along and there's like Roman coins like right there. And you're like, whoa, okay. And
Oh, man.
so no vehicles. So now it's like, okay, crap, how do you actually survey that? And the only way to do it is with a single channel GPR and with some poor guy pushing it for like 6,000 kilometers of pushing, right? So you have 3 or 4 teams working at any one time.
Wow.
But the data is so cool. I mean, literally, you can see foundations of buildings, right? And then if you cut down a little bit further, that's at about 1 meter. You could go down 2 or 3 meters. You see the same place, but a different foundation. So it's like multiple, epochs of civilization in
Yeah.
one place. You're peeling back layers of time.
Wow.
And to see that kind of live is like
And for
mind-blowing.
the first time undisturbed too.
And
That's
undisturbed,
amazing.
right? So that's so cool. That stuff is neat. And then, of course, the stuff I'm doing in the pyramids in Egypt is beyond cool. And every time I go out there, I'm just like, oh my God, what are we finding here? And we kind of more questions come up than we're solving. In fact, we're not solving anything. We're making it more complicated. Like, how the heck was this thing built? So I was there last week and doing some really cool stuff, looking at the actual internal construction of the structure. And that's kind of a culmination of 34 years of doing this stuff as I get to do some of these weird projects. And certainly the pyramids in Egypt are like mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah. So I think what everyone wants to know is, were they built by aliens?
Can
you talk about it?
You know what? Well, I mean, conventional science says no, but on the other hand, conventional science says we don't know how they were built. There's
Yeah.
tons of ideas, hydraulics and ramps and all sorts of things, and of course, of course, not aliens, but we don't really know. And here's the amazing part, right? This is one of the largest structures. It is a 47-story building built 4,500 years ago, and we have no idea what's inside. We have no idea how they built it. In fact, we don't really know what they're there for in the first place, right? Of course, there are tombs and there are access to heaven and whatever, but we don't really know. And the amazing part is we don't know what's inside. And every time my team goes in and we do some internal scanning, we find more things and you kind of go, why the hell did they do that? Like
Yeah.
crazy stuff. Amazing, amazing stuff.
So I heard a theory, and I'm just going to throw this out there, like
Yeah.
resonance chambers and things like that for
Yeah.
meditation and
Yeah.
something like that. Like, I mean, that's fascinating.
Oh,
Like, it makes sense to me if things were proportioned correctly for the right harmonic and things,
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? So there's some really everything was built in those structures for a reason. There was no mistakes. So let's assume there's no mistakes. I mean, they took 30 years to build one of them, so they're pretty well engineered. And you see things in there that you kind of go, "Hey, wait a minute, that's totally off center. That wasn't a screw up. There's a reason for that, right? Why is that cove off center from the gable of the roof or whatever?"
Mm.
And there's if you go back in time, even the Russians in the 70s were doing some electromagnetic studies in there, and we're finding some really weird EM interference coming from certain chambers within the structure that weren't ever followed up on. So there's some weird stuff in there that I'm sure we will figure out at some point. But right now, we're just kind of poking at it, right? We don't have the technology. You can't just take an X-ray of this huge, it's the heaviest object humanity has ever built. Like literally, the second is the Parliament of Romania, which Ceausescu built, and that's like 2/3 of this thing, right? So it's like
Wow.
this is a big, big object, and we have no idea what's inside. No clue.
Yeah, I mean, there was something, I think I saw it on Netflix, where they're talking about mass and distorting, space time and things like that, and how time moves slower near the pyramids, but if you're 100 meters away, you're moving faster,
Right.
just because of the size, the mass, literally
Yeah,
the
yeah,
gravity
absolutely.
field. Yeah,
Yeah, sure, of course. I mean,
wild.
there's going to be some gravity distortion around it. I don't know if it would slow down time, but yeah, who knows? There's all sorts of
Yeah.
theories, and as good scientists, we have to entertain any reasonable theory, right? But then what's reasonable? Because if you ask questions of the level of science 200 years ago, what would reasonable be, right? And you realize when we're looking at things like the pyramid and go, we still can't see inside. We realize how young we are in terms of science. We've only been at this for a couple hundred years at best, right? I am sure 200 years from now, we'll look back and go, hello, we can see this with our phones or, with our
Right.
special X-ray glasses.
Yeah, it is really interesting to think about just how young we are, even as a civilization.
For
And,
sure.
the theories about, lost civilizations and things that we just don't know, giants and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's fascinating to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things I do is I'm on a TV show called Skinwalker Ranch, right? And we focus on potential paranormal activity on a ranch in Utah. And quite, people question, well, as a serious scientist, should it be on there? And the answer is, as a serious scientist, absolutely, I should be on there because it warrants good scientific investigation. But when we get out there and we see weird phenomenon, we realize how little our toolkit is. We only have a certain tools, and we're only looking at certain wavelengths within this electromagnetic spectrum, and we're expecting if there is an alien life form or if there is something there to be communicating with us or be present within our spectrum that we know about. But that's only what we know about, right?
Right.
Like, that's we're looking at it from a human-centric standpoint.
Right. Even like to the point of certain animals can see different wavelengths
Absolutely.
of light versus
Yeah.
us, and they look different to themselves with UV than we can even see, and that's just light.
Right.
It's amazing. Yeah.
That's
How
exactly
much
right.
don't we know?
Well, exactly. So, for example, animals are well documented that they can detect the vibration before an earthquake occur, right? And you and I would just sit here and go, "Oh, what's going on?" Well, look at how little our technology and our field of view really is compared to who knows what's out there.
Yeah,
So,
I'm fascinated by the potential for new technologies too. Like, what's going to
absolutely.
come out next that allows us to tap into things that we don't even think about right now?
Right?
Somebody is at DARPA. I guarantee
Yeah,
you they're
well, I'm
thinking
sure.
about it, but I'm not.
Yeah, it's what we don't know, right?
Yeah.
So we are. Let's look at the radar world. We're restricted to the understanding of how electromagnetics works and how antennas work, and that's gone back to 100 years. This is back to Maxwell's, right? We all antennas used on GPRs are pretty much the same. They're bow tie antennas. Well, why do we have to use electric field antennas? Maybe we use magnetic field antennas that can have a wider bandwidth, perhaps, or maybe these new quantum antennas can do something that existing antennas can't.
The more I hear about the quantum, I don't want
Yeah.
to say quantum realm because that's like too Ant-Man,
Yeah.
but quantum physics in general,
Yeah.
it's like we are just tapping into that. Like,
Sure. Yeah,
what's
exactly.
next? Yeah.
Yeah, and we hear these new sensors of the quantum magnetometers and quantum gravimeters potentially being placed on sensors and platforms to detect even pipes in the ground. Well, it's hard to imagine, but why not? Maybe it can be if the accuracy is there and the price comes down, then maybe that's a possibility. Amazing stuff, right?
Nice.
So.
I don't know really anything about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and this is outside of my what I do, but I do know that there are 3 or 4 fairly major efforts around quantum magnetometers and quantum gravimeters that could have application to even pipe detection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it deals with mass at that point, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's we talked about dowsing briefly earlier.
we did.
And to me, if it works, I don't think we've figured it out yet. And maybe that's how. Maybe it's something quantum that we have yet to discover. I don't I don't do it. I don't tell people to do it. But it's,
Yeah.
the oldest, ancient locate method
Oh, for
that
sure.
people swear by.
They do.
Again, I tell people don't do it. I don't do it. But
Right.
it's still kind of like, who knows? Maybe someday I'll eat my hat. And
Maybe. Yeah, exactly. I mean, from a conventional physics standpoint, I have to put the professorial hat on and say, yeah, that's garbage. On the other hand, as a scientist, as I said, we have to be open to any ideas and until absolutely disproven. Then, okay, maybe there's some phenomenon that we don't fully understand yet. And that's the beauty of science, right? It's not that we have all the answers, but it's the process of discovery, and that's the beauty
exactly.
of it. I
Yeah,
love science
the
because of
scientific
that.
method
Yeah.
is, I don't know, let's figure it out.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Let's figure it out.
Yep.
And there's no no's and there's no absolute yeses. It's like, well, we're learning as we go. And that's cool.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have the answers.
Yeah, that ties directly back, I think, to the technology, right?
Yeah.
So there is no perfect, in my world, locate technologies.
No.
EM can only do certain things if it's made of metal. GPR works sometimes. There's conditions where it doesn't.
Yes.
There's acoustic pipe locators out there,
Yep.
different types,
Yep.
either with acoustic sound, like a water leak detector, or
Yeah.
acoustic pipe locator, pipe knockers, things like that. So
Yeah.
I'm a fan of technology
Well,
in general.
I think when you look at your specific part of what you do and utility detection, it's so much about bringing in as much information you can, right? And I hear about guys just using one tool, and it's like, oh man, if all you have is a hammer, then every problem becomes a nail, right? You've heard that adage. And certainly with utility detection, you've got to throw pretty much everything at it, and then hope that you come up with a story that kind of makes sense. But yeah, I mean, we have the tools we have today. 20 years from now, I'm sure there'll be something else, but we have to work within the realms of what we have, and we're a little limited, right? I mean, EM is a fairly simple technique, but it has its limitations. Um, GPR has lots of limitations, but where it works beautifully well. And acoustics, well, that kind of works sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. So yeah, you better have a lot of tools in your toolbox because
Yep.
it's not just a hammer.
Yeah, pretty soon it's not just going to be a truck or a van. It's going to be a full rig,
That's
full
right.
semi truck, like a concert.
That's right.
Like Metallica or somebody's coming to
That's
town.
right. You got these huge big cases being wheeled out.
Like 12 people. Like, who are they? Well, they're the team.
Yeah, they're the team, pretty
Yeah.
much. That's right.
Yeah, need a big gazebo out there.
Yeah, that's it.
Lots of tables. So with GPR, have
Yeah.
you ever been tasked with doing the pirate thing and looking for buried treasure?
Absolutely. Yeah, I try not to do it too much. I have a daughter now, so I've been told that I have to be a little bit responsible on where I go because treasure hunting's never in the U.S. Virgin Islands or anything. It's in probably dodgy places, and there's some risks involved. But I've done some interesting things with GPR, and some of them are in places that have some strife involved. Yeah, absolutely. So I got to go and spend some time in Syria and northern Iraq looking for, well, a whole bunch of things, everything from Roman coins and well, things of historical value, shall we say, all the way to recent things during the Ottoman Empire of old chests from the Turkish that were left behind during the First World War, and they were buried beside railway tracks. And we'd go along with GPRs and metal detectors and try and find those things. So I've got to see some interesting things, and occasionally being successful in the South Pacific, looking at Japanese war treasure and all sorts of things. So that in terms of challenges, those are treasure hunting projects are always very, very challenging. Both with the environment, sometimes getting things through customs in unusual countries, all the way to just finding a small item that could be buried amongst acres and acres of, it's a needle in a haystack sort of thing, right? And GPR is not always the solution. But yeah, I've been successful and a lot of unsuccessful over the years, but it's all been, for the most part, fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun, actually. So I
Yeah.
can definitely see how you'll thoroughly enjoy what you do, and it sounds like you're just having a great time. So
Oh, for sure, for sure, yeah. And then doing some of the TV show stuff and all of that is always challenging as well because those guys, they want to show new technology. They don't want to have a cart and a guy pushing a cart because that's been done 100 times over, right? So for each TV show you do, be it a documentary for the BBC or something on Netflix or History Channel, they're always looking for something unique. And that involves probably making a radar from scratch. That's pretty stressful. And then it has to work on camera the first time, right? And you don't often have a chance to test it out. So some of it's like, oh God, here we go. Like, let's make this work in front of, 30 million people. And, but that's all part of the fun and games.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's another question I had, like challenges. Like, what's probably the most challenging thing you've been able to overcome?
I think it's, a lot of the challenges and what I'm asked to do is around miniaturization. So trying to get a radar that does a certain thing as small as possible because it needs to fit into a small space or because we need to have many of them side by side, whatever the case may be, or it needs to go on a drone, for example. So miniaturization, but still having the performance of a larger system, right? So that's really challenging. And then, of course, just to get it working. So, when you're a commercial radar manufacturer, you have a whole R&D team, you have lots of engineers at your beck and call. I'm kind of one guy, and I have a few RF engineers who help me. But at the end of the day, I'm the one with that screwdriver putting the last thing together, crossing yourself, going, please don't blow up in my face, and turning it on, right? And going, yeah, okay, okay, it didn't blow up, and nothing's getting hot. And it's always the sniff test, right? I'm literally taking a sniffer board going, okay, it's not burning. That is good. All right, everybody's good. So there's always challenges around turning something on for the first time. And sometimes you've been working on it for 2 years, and you just kind of literally it comes down to turning it on and going, please don't blow up.
Fingers crossed.
Oh, yeah. And sometimes I've, burnt my fingers because the capacitor blew or something.
Right.
So.
Yep. So the fire extinguisher is nearby.
It's nearby. Yes, absolutely. The fire blanket, actually.
The blanket, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was just talking to my kids about that. Like, make sure if it's a grease fire.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
don't
yeah.
put water on
I
it.
don't think my house insurance actually covers the stuff, but hopefully they're not listening to this. So anyway.
Your office.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Totally don't do it in the spare bedroom. God, no.
Yeah, we'll edit that.
Yeah, we'll edit that out. Yeah.
So you've been around the world.
Yeah.
What do you notice that's different elsewhere versus the United States or even Canada?
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of your little cousin, right? So in the utility locating market, I mean, with no offense, but we're in kindergarten in North America compared to the Europeans, right? The Europeans have legislated levels of accuracy, be it, PAS 128. Yeah, exactly, right? And so within Geolitix, I get to see, well, I don't see what people are doing, but I see where they're coming from. And man, out of all the users, we are a European company, basically. Like it is 70% Europeans, and of that, a large percentage of the UK. And why is that? Well, they're the ones doing the post-processing because they're not doing spray paint on the ground because essentially you can't do that, right? You need to know what you're doing and you need to have a level of accuracy. And you look at the United States and go, I know some states are legislating that, like Colorado, for example. But man, Canada and the United States, I feel that we're so far behind that we're still in that, push and spray sort of world, right? And it's so weird because the United States is known for being so litigious. And you kind of go, wow, wouldn't you guys be the ones that are really trying to collect proper data and document what you do? And what's shocking is that, sometimes I get called in as an expert witness for, legal situations. And 9.9 times out of 10, the utility locating company has not done any documentation. They haven't even saved the data. They haven't taken site photographs or anything. So you have nothing to stand on. And you kind of go, well, it's all washed away now. So what happened to this utility that now we've hit a gas line and you have nothing to document it with? Oh, well, that's just the way we do it. Really? Really? In the United States? You would think that you'd really want to cover your butt, right? I find that shocking. So I think and I hope that eventually the North American market will move towards the European standards of accuracy, collecting data, post-processing it, and making that kind of industry standard that there is actually a deliverable that you can stand behind.
Yeah, I feel like the legislature in general, it has been changing in the U.S.
Yeah.
I've noticed just from being involved in certain groups and stuff that some states, and I think the CGA is kind of driving the force behind this.
Right.
It tends to cascade from the best practices.
Yeah.
That, if it's a new installation, they're supposed to be collecting data on it.
Yeah.
But then there's still the issue of all the abandoned facilities.
Right.
What do we do with that? That's
right.
an unanswered question to date.
Yeah.
And I think they're leaning that way.
Okay.
And I hope relatively soon we'll get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the data collection piece is something that's on the table currently, but
Absolutely,
it's not
right?
mandatory.
It's weird. So, I come from, prehistoric times when the GPR market, anybody doing GPR specific, right? Not the electromagnetic locating, but the GPR was specifically the domain of a geophysicist. Like you need to be a licensed geophysicist in the 80s and 90s. And what happened was that the geophysical market, and particularly the GPR manufacturers, ran out of people to sell the damn things to, right? Like there's only so many geophysicists. And it was like we were gatekeeping, right? Oh, no, 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 you can't do that with GPR. You can't find a pipe. It's really, we need to be a licensed geophysicist to do this. So the GPR market shifted and they started making products literally called Easy Locator. And they try to say, hey, all you have to find is a hyperbola and off you go. And we can get somebody off the parking lot in Home Depot to go do this thing, right? And you can dumb down a technology only so far, but at the end of the day, it's still a geophysical tool, right? So it's like trying to take an MRI or a CAT scan machine, and maybe we can make it simple, but there's only so far you can go. And I think what's happened is, yeah, they're selling tens of thousands of these GPRs. It's probably quite a few tens of thousands worldwide. But there's still this gap between a knowledge of, and this is what you're working on with your training courses, right? What the tool can do and can't do, and the deliverables. So that's, I think, where the stumbling block is. Whereas I feel in Europe, the actual guys pushing the cart may be a little bit more trained than the average North American user.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there.
Yeah.
There are some companies out there that, have pretty decent training programs
Yep.
that could be 6 months long, but who's pushing that cart? Were they running an ice cream truck yesterday?
Yeah, sure.
Were they working at Home Depot 6 months ago?
Yeah.
What's their level of utility understanding, and how do you bridge that gap with
Right.
years of experience? But there's also a flip side of that coin. You could have 15 years of experience and still not know what you're doing out there.
Absolutely, right? So, as an example, like today, we were out and you were talking about all these risers and stuff, right? I come from a pure geophysical background, and now I'm kind of going, oh, what does that all mean? So I understand the physics and all that, but I don't understand the practical stuff. And I think the ideal utility locator has that nice mix of understanding a little bit of what's going on with that signal and what we're seeing, but also understands the layman's terms of, oh, okay, that's probably a water pipe, and okay, let's do this circle thing.
The good ones do. You mentioned something about just one type of locator, right?
Yeah.
Well, people just stick with one frequency on that
Oh,
one locator,
right,
and then suddenly my arrows are gone. What do I do now?
right.
I follow a group on Facebook. I rarely chime in, but
Yeah,
that was just a post yesterday that they made, and it's thousands of locators
right,
in the country,
right.
and this person didn't know what their locator does.
Yikes. Okay.
Like that's like grabbing an iPhone and not knowing how to make a phone call,
Right,
in my opinion. So
right.
how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah, and
And they work for a major utility contractor.
right. So much of that is around training.
They're doing this every day.
Yeah. Wow. That's scary, right?
It is to me.
Because yeah, okay, it's water main, whatever. But what if you just use the wrong frequency, use the wrong technology, and you missed a gas line? I mean, that's a lives at stake.
Right. I mean, if you're locating fiber, nobody's going to die if they hit that
Whatever.
fiber line.
You're in big trouble, but it's going to cost you a lot. But nobody's going to die.
I think the average fiber line hit in 2011, which was probably the last time I looked it up, was like $750,000 for the
Yikes.
repair. So if
Okay.
you're a small contractor and that happens to you,
You're out of business.
you're done.
Yeah.
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 That's like over a decade ago.
You miss a gas line, and somebody hits that and it ignites.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit more.
Yeah. But then
Yeah.
these same people are jumping into different trucks and changing their vests, and they're doing basically the same work.
Right.
And
Right.
it
Yeah.
could be gas today, and it was fiber yesterday.
Right.
That's the scary part.
It is.
And
It is.
And it's a very incestuous industry. They literally poach each other
Right.
in the contract locate world. I've been around it. I've been part of it.
Long enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that'll eventually change. I think there's
I
going to
hope
be a
so.
little
I
bit
think
more
it needs
training
to.
and requirements of certification, maybe around understanding the technology and the limitations.
Yeah, training. I think there's a big push for training primarily around the mapping side,
Yes.
because that's ultimately what we need.
Yeah.
There could be company X that suddenly just assumed all of the streetlights that they were previously done by another company, but
Right.
they're not sharing the mapping information with them.
Right.
Things like that. But this happens with water. This happens with gas. It could be an old propane system.
Yep.
No records. Now you got to go locate this thing. Good luck.
Right.
Yeah. So what do you do? You got to start mapping it.
That's it.
Somehow.
Well,
But you mentioned geophysicists. I know land surveyors and engineers are very particular about mapping information.
absolutely. It's particularly here in California, right? And what you call yourself, and you're not mapping, and there's very specific guidelines around nomenclature of what your services are.
So how do we bridge that?
That's right.
I don't think anyone's talking about that right now.
That's right.
But it's on the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, even looking at the Canadian context, in many provinces, you need to be a licensed geophysicist to sign off on a geophysical report. Okay, well, what constitutes geophysics then, right? Is GPR a geophysical tool, and should it be done under the purview of a professional geophysicist? Well, if that's the case, then 10 out of 10 utility detection companies from Vancouver to Montreal are out of business right there because they don't have a geophysicist on staff. They probably couldn't afford one. On the other hand, is this really geophysics? And, it all comes down to where we draw the line and how much training is really required. But the whole concept of licensing of professions, be it a surgeon or an architect, is to protect the public's interest, right? And in terms of geophysics or geology, it was always around the risk of stock market reports when it comes to mineral resources. That was the risk, or oil and gas deposits. Well, I would say that, yeah, there's very much a public interest if somebody gets a utility locate wrong, because you could kill somebody. And should it be licensed? Maybe.
So this is a thing that I've been talking about my whole career.
Yeah.
I got into the industry about 99, started pushing a GPR cart in 07.
Yeah.
Got into EM after, right? Maybe
Right.
08 or so.
Right.
You need a license to do this terrible haircut.
Right.
But you can get out there and grab a locator on eBay and start slapping paint on the ground right
That's right.
now.
Yep.
Right?
And
unless it's gas, right? If it crosses a state line,
okay.
you have to have an OQ. But an OQ is not training. OQ is a checklist that says you can perform a covered task. That's something else that I do.
Okay.
For a while.
I don't know that stuff. Okay.
Oh, operator qualification. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Subpart N, section P, 4 things you have to do all 4.
Right.
We don't need to get into it.
Yeah.
But other than that,
yeah.
What's stopping you from doing that? Nothing.
$17
an hour, $25 an hour, national average.
Yeah.
So if we start training people, right? I think this is something else.
Right.
What's the reason? Well, I think it's just about money at the end of the day. If you're a company paying $6 a ticket, maybe $10 to $12 a ticket. What's a ticket? A drop, right?
Yeah.
So what? Maybe 25 to 50 foot span or something, depending on where you're at in the city.
Right.
Suddenly you got to pay these guys more. What if they need to be unionized? Like in California.
Yeah, that changes the whole industry.
Oh, man.
But in terms of looking at public interest, right? Like, what's the difference between making a mistake constructing a house that might fall down in the next, hurricane, and obviously there's licensing for an architect, right, for a reason, or a structural engineer. What's the difference between that and somebody marking out gas lines going into the local service station that, needs to have some construction done? And boy, just as many lives are at stake.
Yeah, and we talk about gas, but even, power.
Sure.
Horizontal directional drilling has become very popular in the past decade and beyond because it's looked at as being minimally invasive.
Right.
But is it?
Do you know where you're drilling through?
When you're putting a gas line through a sewer main and
14,000 kV volt. Yeah.
Kablooey, So, that's crossbores. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but there's been a huge crossbore mitigation push nationally in the U.S. for a long time for that very reason.
Makes sense.
But how much has been installed since that effort has even started? And that was back in like 2013, 14, 15 or so.
Yeah.
That's a decade ago now.
Yeah.
And they're still cleaning that up in San Francisco and other parts of the country.
Wow.
It's not done.
The other thing I see, just from the instrumentation standpoint, is that there's so much competition amongst manufacturers now. And again, it comes down to a little bit of lack of training, perhaps, on the users, that there's so much overselling about the technology, right? Like, oh, we make a radar that covers all frequencies and it can see everything. It's like, hold on, no, it does not. It can't do that, right? But when you go and buy a radar, you're so open to being oversold on a technology. And that's kind of scary too, because again, huge decisions are made on some specifications that might have no meaning whatsoever. And if you don't have a good understanding of what's really happening in that radar, well, you're saying, hey, there's no utility here at all because my magical radar that covers all depths and can see everything, because that's what the salesman told me, says there's nothing there. And then somebody goes and hits a 1,000 kV line or something crazy.
Right.
So that's something I've seen certainly in the last 5 to 10 years, that a lot of overselling amongst the manufacturers, and I don't think it's their fault. It's just that's the way the industry's gone. It's just like, let's exaggerate a little bit on our performance because that guy did it, so I'm going to do it now too, and it becomes challenging.
Yeah, like if it's just a strictly sales push and all they're thinking about is numbers and stuff like that.
That's
I don't
right.
I don't know that it's everybody out there, but
I hope
I
not.
specifically remember when I got into the industry
Yeah.
that certainly was rampant back then.
Oh, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure, and
I
and then this new thing of, oh, we'll do it by drones. Oh my goodness, right? Like,
Right? Yeah, so that's the new thing, right? So what's your opinion on
well, it's not an opinion, right?
yeah.
The physics is very, very clear. You have to be an absolute freaking idiot to think that you can use drones to find utilities using GPR. Now, there are opportunities to do EM and MAG and all sorts of other, sensor technologies, but using GPR, the physics just doesn't support it. You need to be so close to the ground, you need to be coupled to the ground, and even then, you're losing, a significant amount of your energy into the ground. There's really no excuse to use a drone for utility detection unless you happen to be looking for landmines or there's a good reason why you can't have boots on the ground. But yeah, drones aren't the answer there. The data quality is absolute crap, right? So I'll give you an example. So I work with the South Korean army, and we're trying to develop some drone-based GPR to find unexploded ordnance on the demilitarized zone, and the data is shite. Absolutely, it's clay rich. The targets are very small. The cross section's terrible. But from an operational standpoint, well, they can't have boots on the ground, so some data, regardless of how crappy it is better than nothing. Okay, fine. Of course, glaciology. There's places where drone GPR works, and it's the only solution. But man, I see so many new companies, they'll call me up or write to me and say, "Hey, we bought a drone GPR and we're going to try and use this to find utilities." And I'm like, "Where?" In the Gaza Strip? Like, why the hell would you use a GPR on a drone? Why don't you just push a cart? Oh, well, we can automate it. Okay, being a shit data, like, what's the point,
Yeah,
right?
that make
So,
that makes sense to me. My question was air gap, right? So
oh,
I mean, we
absolutely.
preach air gap all the time with
Yep.
GPR. So I'm like, okay, how does that work?
Yeah, it doesn't, right? It absolutely doesn't. The only way you can use a drone would be to use what's called horn antennas. So these are these big, tall ones that are used for highway, looking at pavement analysis or rail bed analysis. And yeah, no drone's going to carry one of those anyway because they're so freaking heavy. So yeah, drone GPR to suddenly solve all the world's problems of utility detection. Well, I can tell the caller's intelligence just from that that comment.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, that answers that question, I
Yeah,
guess.
don't go there.
Yeah. I'm gonna let that lie. At that.
There you go.
Yeah, there is some newer advancements with the EM side.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like magnetometers on a drone.
Oh,
I could
for
see
sure.
that.
There's so much that can be done from drones, and yeah, no doubt at all. Unfortunately, with GPR, physics is physics, right? It's
Gotcha.
not going to work. Yeah, well, one of the things that I always look at this as a technology gap is, we're doing so many things in robotics, and one of the challenges of a GPR is just the labor-intensive nature of it, right? Like, the best GPR is dense data. If you can do GPR that is the width of your antenna, then you have, as close to 3D as you're going to get, and then things that are hard to see in a 2D profile might pop up in 3D, but who the heck is going to drive back and forth or push this bloody cart? Well, I think the next step might be to kind of roboticize that or automate that a little bit, either using, quadrupod dogs or an actual track vehicle. But I think that might be where the next GPR big step might be, is to get smaller antennas into robots.
Yeah, automation is definitely something that people have been talking about for a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, even like a ground-based mobile 4x4 wheeled vehicle or
Yeah.
tracked vehicle or something like that,
Yeah.
depending on the terrain.
Well, as we were talking about before, you got robotic lawnmowers and certainly robotic,
Right.
vacuum cleaners. There's no reason why we can't roboticize the GPR.
Right.
And I've seen a couple of the manufacturers playing around with that, but I think, that needs to be a marriage between the robotics and the radar technology. But these new antennas are getting smaller and smaller and lighter and lighter. There's no reason why they can't be combined.
Right. Yeah. And with the technology we have currently for drone like mission planning and stuff,
Yeah.
why can't that be ground based?
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Oh, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure. There's some neat things that are coming up, not just in the GPR space, but also just in positioning, right? Like you're doing a concrete scan, for example, looking at rebar or whatever, and you got to lay the sheet out and follow the track. Well, then your GSSI camera sort of sensor and doing motion capture, that's a no-brainer, right? Can you imagine doing that on a larger scale? You set up a couple cameras around, you have a little reflector on your GPR, and off you go. Bang, 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 bang. Just drew random lines everywhere. As long as there's coverage, it doesn't matter. They don't need to be straight. Man, you'd cover an area so much faster.
Well, even with RTK,
Yep.
there's a lot of N-trip RTK out there now, like
Yeah.
rarely accurate stuff.
That's right. There are a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
Yep.
And even getting a subscription,
Yeah.
to something to do corrections to actually plan that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I think
They're doing it in ag right now.
Well,
Yeah,
for sure.
There's drone ag vehicles out there all over the place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, although the radar itself, we're still bound by physics and what we can do, right? There's so many other things that are making life easier for working within those parameters, both positioning and better data processing, that I think those are where the advancements will be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a big, in the utility space, 50 and 5. They want to bring the damages down 50% in the next 5 years. And I think this started a couple of years ago. So
Right.
I don't know where we are currently.
Yeah.
But I think that this sort of technology is really going to be something that can help that,
That's super exciting.
in
you
certain
go.
areas. But boots
Yeah.
on the ground, I think, are still, at the end of the day, that the person
Somebody's got to
behind
operate the thing.
tech.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, it was great having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me down here.
Episode 1.
I'm so excited. I was like, all right, this is exciting. I took your virginity.
Yeah. You're gonna have to stick around for the cuddling, though.
I know. Okay,
episode
the
2
afterglow. Yeah, it's the afterglow. Okay.
We're gonna have episode 2 in the morning.
Okay.
You're
And
the
we
first-
might not get along as well, but whatever. That's how things go.
Is that the walk of shame or something?
I know, exactly. I'll be taking the Uber home. That's awkward.
Yeah. So where can people find out more about you?
Well, certain websites, but I don't know. I'm on LinkedIn, right? So you can look me up on LinkedIn, or I guess IMDb, or geolitix.com if you're interested in understanding how the software works. Yeah, I'm always happy to help people understand how to use radar technology or how not to use radar technology. I'd say 6 out of 10 times I'm telling people that, yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree. Radar's not for you, right? So, but by all means, I'm happy to talk to people.
Great. Well, thanks again.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Anytime you're in the area, you got to swing by.
Absolutely. I'll follow gunfire. No, I'm kidding. This is California. This is safe. Right on. Thanks so much,
right.
Adam.
And with that, I'm going to cry myself to sleep.
Okay. Enjoy.
And cut.
And cut.
So, yeah, I noticed that right when,
Yeah.
and I was just going to close in on you, so don't worry.
Yeah, we're
going
okay.
to edit that out.
Edit that out.
All you.
Okay.
We did it.
Okay. I think it's okay. I think we made it fun.
I forgot to hit record.
Fuck. Well, we can do it again.